The case featured in this episode has been researched using police records, court documents, witness statements, and the news. Listener discretion is advised. All parties mentioned are innocent until proven guilty, and all opinions are my own. Hey everyone, my name is Nikki Young, and this is Serial Napper, the true crime podcast for naps. I'm back with another true crime story to lull you to sleep, or perhaps to give you nightmares. On April 1st, 2024, Sade Robinson, a 19-year-old from Milwaukee, told an employee at her apartment building that she was looking forward to a date that evening. Just hours later, stills from a surveillance video captured Sade sitting next to a man at Twisted Fisherman, a local restaurant, before leaving with him. That would be the last time that anyone saw her alive. The following day, Sade's car was found burnt out in a parking lot, her clothes discarded in the trunk. But the horrors didn't end there. A human leg was discovered near the shores of Lake Michigan, and soon after, a foot matching the leg was found just a few miles away in Milwaukee. The investigation into Sade's disappearance would unravel a chilling and twisted nightmare, one that has left family, friends, and the police searching for answers. Mostly, why would someone do something so horrific to this young lady who was nothing but a kind soul to everyone that she met? So, dim the lights, put your phone down, and listen as I dive deep into the shocking case of Sade Robinson, her final moments, the unsettling discoveries, and the ongoing search for justice against the man who took her life. So let's jump right in. Sade Carlina Robinson was known for her curiosity and determination. Growing up in Milwaukee, her mother would say that she embraced life with enthusiasm, even as a young girl. In elementary school, she joined the Girl Scouts and was active in soccer, but her true passion was for the arts. Sade was a natural dancer. Her mother would recall how she lit up whenever she took the stage. But her creative talents didn't stop there. She also developed a love for rapping and performing, and even explored the world of ballroom dancing. In middle school, she took on a new challenge, joining the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, JROTC. At the time, she even dreamed of one day joining the U.S. Air Force. As I said, this girl was determined to push her limits. As a teenager, Sade attended Riverside High School on Milwaukee's vibrant East Side, where she excelled not only academically, but also socially. She had a solid group of friends who would remain in her life even as an adult. Seriously, these were the kind of friends that every girl wishes she had in her life, but more on that later. Sade's drive and ambition were clear, so much so that she graduated a semester early in December 2021, walking alongside the class of 2022 to receive her diploma. After high school, Sade wasted no time in forging her future. She enrolled at Milwaukee Area Technical College, MATC, eager to pursue a degree in criminal justice of all things, all while balancing two jobs, one working at Pizza Shuttle on the east side and the other at the Wisconsin Country Club on the northwest side. She worked hard so that she could live independently on her own, renting an apartment all by herself at the age of 19. At the country club, Sade was described by colleagues as having a smile that felt like a superpower, one that brightened the room and made everyone feel at ease. Another coworker admired her wisdom and strength, noting that she seemed far beyond her years. She was a special person, they shared. Even with the demands of two jobs, Sade tried to make time to go out and be social, which is why on April 1st, 2024, 19-year-old Sade made plans to go out on a date. Earlier on in the day, she had even expressed to an employee who worked at her building just how excited she was to go out on her first date with a much older man, a 33-year-old named Maxwell Anderson. It hasn't been made clear exactly how the unlikely pair would have met. I've read some reports that have stated that they were chatting on a dating site, a dating app, while others suggest that they may have met when Sade was at a local bar that Maxwell worked at. Sade often liked to go to this particular bar because they didn't check IDs. Remember, Sade, she was just 19 years old. And one has to wonder if she knew how much older Maxwell was when she accepted the date. Either way, at approximately 4:15 p.m. that night, she texted Maxwell to make arrangements on where they were going to meet. Maxwell suggested that they meet at the Twisted Fisherman restaurant for dinner. This was a spot that Maxwell knew well because he had previously worked there. This spot also worked because he had to pick up a W-2 form from his previous manager. Sade agreed, saying that, she was feeling seafood. They met at the Twisted Fisherman about an hour later, with Maxwell arriving first and telling the bartender that he was there for his first date with a young woman. He was wearing a red flannel coat with a gray hood, a black Carhartt t-shirt, and dark jeans, with his hair pulled back into a ponytail. Sade arrived shortly after and joined him at the bar where they shared some food and a few drinks. She wore a black puffy coat over a white t-shirt and ripped blue jeans. Cameras at the restaurant would capture their interactions, and everything seemed to be going as expected. They both appeared to be having a good time, engaged in conversation. At 6:30 p.m., they are seen leaving the restaurant and then heading towards Maxwell's car. They decided to head to another bar called Duke's on Water, where they would be captured on their security camera having a few more drinks. While at Duke's, Sade sent a Snapchat out to her friends, the very last communication that Sade would ever send. Then, Maxwell and Sade, they're seen leaving the bar at 9:06 p.m. Somehow, Maxwell has convinced Sade to go back to his house on South 39th Street. Now, I was young once, and I did things far more stupid than going back to a date's house. Sade did the right thing by first meeting her date at a public location. Unfortunately, Maxwell knew exactly what to do and say to get her to let her guard down. Still, Sade was a smart girl. She used an app called Life360, which is a location-sharing app, meaning her mother and several of her friends knew her location at all times. While this would not save Sade from the grips of this disgusting monster, it would help investigators to piece together what would happen to her that night. And what we know now is that Sade would walk into Maxwell's home and then would never leave again in one piece. The following day, on April 2nd, Sade was supposed to work a shift at Pizza Shuttle, but she didn't show up. Her manager, Romano, would say that this wasn't like her at all. He said, quote, "We kind of knew something was up. We had been calling her all day, but no one could get a hold of Sade. Not her manager, not her mother, and not her friend, who has been identified as AJ in police documents." When no one was still able to touch base with Sade that evening, AJ walked into the police station at around 9 p.m. and reported her friend as missing. She told the police that Sade wasn't answering her calls and that her last point of contact was the evening prior when she had posted that photo to Snapchat while at the bar Duke's on Water. Now, oftentimes when an adult doesn't show up for work or they're not answering phone calls, this doesn't immediately raise the alarm for the police. Grown adults are allowed to fall off the map if they so choose, and oftentimes those who do show up within the next following few days. However, Sade's friends and family didn't know at that time that on the same day they reported her missing, several very bizarre discoveries had been made by the police. Discoveries that would lead them to believe that something terrible may have happened to Sade Robinson. In the early morning hours of April 2nd, the Milwaukee Fire Department responded to reports of a vehicle on fire. It's a 2020 Honda Civic, registered to Sade Robinson. In the trunk of this burnt-out car, investigators would find remnants of a cell phone and clothing that would later be identified as the ones Sade had worn during her date. Security camera footage would play a big role in this case, which is actually kind of unusual to see, despite the fact that in today's society, we have security cameras just about everywhere tracking us. You wouldn't believe how many times these cameras don't function, or they record over important footage, or the footage comes out so blurry you don't know what's what. But in this case, a camera posted in a parking lot captured a white male walking away from the burning car at around 7:29 a.m. He's wearing a gray hoodie and he's carrying a tan backpack. A witness would later say that he saw a male get out of the Honda Civic and toss a lighter into the car before walking away. Then the car went up in flames. But that wasn't the worst of it. At around 5:30 p.m. that same day, a human leg was found by a citizen at Warnemont Park down a 100-foot cliff near the shoreline next to a pump house. The leg, which appeared to belong to a black female, was severed just below the hip socket, and it appeared to have been sawed off. The toes on the feet had pink nail polish, and because the leg didn't appear to be decomposing, it had recently been severed from its owner. Later, a medical examiner would say that the leg belonged to someone approximately 5 feet tall. The top of the femur bone appeared to have been snapped off, while the amputation point showed signs that a sharp tool was used to saw the leg off. They would still need to send the leg to the lab for testing in order to identify who it belonged to, but it didn't look good in the investigation to find missing Sade Robinson. Lucky for investigators, there happened to be another security camera in the area of the park where the leg was found, one which captured someone entering the road headed towards the pump house at around 2:53 a.m. And as it would turn out, city workers reported that someone had used a car to ram open a gate to the service road leading to the pump house. Near the broken gate, investigators found pieces of a Honda Civic vehicle that would match Shade's car. Other video captured images of a human figure walking towards the cliff of the beach at around 3:02 a.m. Then, about an hour and a half later, the person returns to their vehicle and leaves the park. Milwaukee police conduct a welfare check at Sade's apartment, but no one answers the door. In speaking with some of the staff working at the apartment building, they learned that the last time they had seen Sade in the building was on April 1st, when she was talking about just how excited she was to go on that date. They released this information to the media in hopes of gaining any information from the public who may have seen Sade the night that she disappeared or since then. That's when another friend of Sade's calls in a tip that she had been tracking her location using the Life 360 app. Again, great idea. I love this. Girls looking out for each other. According to the app, Sade, or at least her phone, was in the area of Warnemont Park at around 4:30 a.m. on April 2nd, the same spot where the human leg had been discovered. Investigators got a warrant for Sade's phone records, and this is when they found all of those text messages between Sade and her date, Maxwell Anderson. On April 4th, 3 days since Sade has been seen, law enforcement pull over Maxwell while he's driving in his black 2009 Hyundai Santa Fe, just a few blocks away from his house. In his vehicle, they find a hoodie that matches the one worn by the suspect who set Sade's car on fire. They also see what looks like human blood on the front passenger's side door speaker cover. This guy might be one of the worst criminals of all time. After taking him into custody, police execute a search warrant on his home and find even more incriminating evidence. They discovered blood on the bedding in one of the bedrooms, as well as blood on the walls leading down to the basement. They also find gasoline containers in his garage, which they believed he used to torch Sade's car. It's as if everything he did to try to hide evidence only made it easier for the police to track him down. So who is this criminal genius, Maxwell Anderson? This 33-year-old Milwaukee man had a history of legal troubles, including convictions for domestic abuse, disorderly conduct, and driving under the influence. Court documents also revealed ongoing concerns about his mental health and struggles with substance abuse. He's worked various roles in the service industry, primarily as a bartender and a security guard. His most recent job was at Victor's nightclub, a bar that Sade was known to frequent, where a manager praised him as a hard-working and well-liked member of the team. However, he did have a troubled past. In 2014, he was involved in an altercation with a family member. While visiting family in Colorado, he got into it with a relative who had just returned home from work and found him acting erratically. When he was questioned about what was going on, he refused to answer. Instead, he began screaming at this relative and throwing things around the house. The relative ran into his bedroom and called his father, who in turn called the police. When officers arrived at the home, Maxwell stole this family member's vehicle and crashed it into a patio. He ended up getting into an altercation with another relative and broke his ribs. It's believed that he was likely under the influence, and he was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of disorderly conduct, resulting in a $416 fine, which seems like a slap on the wrist to me. Clearly, it was not a deterrent of any kind, because the following year, he had more legal troubles. In 2015, again, he was staying with a relative, living in their basement for the last 2 months, but it wasn't really working out. This relative tried to lay down some ground rules about cleaning up after himself and constantly coming in and out of the home. This did not sit well with Maxwell, who suddenly became violent, throwing a glass, putting his fist through the wall, and smashing his relative's cell phone after he had tried to call 911 for help. During this altercation, Maxwell caused more than $1,300 worth of damage, and he was charged with 4 misdemeanors. He pled guilty to criminal damage to property, intimidating a witness and disorderly conduct, and domestic abuse, and he was given probation for a year. His behavior was only escalating, and yet another slap on the wrist. Now, Maxwell went under the radar for the next few years, but then in 2019, he was charged with battery and disorderly conduct after he was recorded on video attacking a man who had tried to intervene when he was seen yelling at a woman. This time, he was given 1 year of probation, which included terms where he had to keep a job and submit random drug tests. He also had to do 25 hours of volunteer service and pay $7,000 in restitution. In 2020, he purchased the home in Milwaukee, the one that he would use to do horrific things to an unsuspecting young woman. In the following years, he'd have several DUI charges, but nothing as violent as what he was preparing himself to do. On April 6th, 5 days after Sade went on that date from hell, more human remains would be found. Located near a playground in the vicinity where Sade's car had been found burned out, they discovered a human foot and more human flesh. They appeared to be from the same individual as the leg, with the foot having the same matching nail polish as the leg that had been found. The leg, the foot, and the other pieces of human flesh would be identified as belonging to Sade Robinson. While they would not be able to locate all the pieces of her body, the evidence would suggest that Sade was dead. Police arrested Maxwell Anderson and charged him with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson of property other than a building. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges. The complaint against him read, "The facts mentioned in this complaint cause complainant to conclude that the defendant intentionally killed and then dismembered Robinson with the intent to conceal the homicide, and it occurred between the arrival of the defendant's residence and his departure from the Warnemont Park area." While Maxwell Anderson has been completely uncooperative with the investigation, that didn't stop Sade's friends and family from organizing their own search parties to try to find the rest of her remains. And I truly cannot imagine the pain that one must feel from not being able to give her a proper burial.
My message to the community and to everyone is to please keep searching for my baby. I need all of her. Her corpse was found her torso? Have they run tests? I did not ask to be chosen to be the voice for the community, and that my daughter was chosen as the angelic spirit to speak for all of the lost Black and brown girls gone missing, because Sade speaks to me daily. And we do not want this to happen to any other family of color, because this has been taking place for too long.
While walking along an Illinois municipal beach, a citizen discovered a human arm. A coroner would use DNA to positively identify the arm as belonging to Sade. There would also be a torso discovered along a remote area of a beach in South Milwaukee, which is also believed to be Sade's. Piece by piece, her mother has had to be re-traumatized over the news that more of her daughter's body has been found. In June, Sade's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Maxwell Anderson, seeking damages for emotional distress. Now they're looking for compensation, as well as the proceeds from the sale of Maxwell's house, the house that Sade was allegedly killed in. They also allege that Maxwell's family removed property from the home, including pieces of key evidence, which may include a finger that they believe belonged to Sade. According to what is written in the lawsuit, quote, he knew or should have known that his actions would cause the death of Sade Robinson, and that as a direct result of his actions, Sade Robinson would suffer immense pain, and that her mother and sister would suffer in an indescribable way for the remainder of their lives at the loss of Sade Robinson, and the visual sight of seeing her body's remains located over time in decaying, decomposed pieces. In August, newly unsealed search warrants were released, and they detailed even more shocking information related to this case. There was a confidential informant who came forward to police, allegedly a friend of Maxwell's, and they said that Maxwell had plotted Sade's death about a month prior to going through with his plan. According to this informant's statement, he was at Maxwell's residence on March 5th, and Maxwell told him that he had recently met a young lady, Sade, and he planned to kill her. His plan included bringing Sade back to his home, pulling a handgun on her, and then bringing her down to the basement. Allegedly, Maxwell showed him the space in his basement, which, by the way, pardon my language, looks like an absolute shithole. And then he said that he planned on shooting her and dismembering her there. He also allegedly said that he would get rid of her body by cutting it up and scattering pieces all over the city. This informant claimed to have seen 3 saws in that basement that Maxwell said that he would use. Now, I don't care how long you've been friends with someone. I can't imagine hearing this information and not immediately going to the police, especially knowing this guy's past violent criminal history. Nobody makes up this kind of story as a joke. If what this informant is saying is true, he had every opportunity to save Sade, and he chose not to. It's unfortunate because now, in exchange for his statement, he's not going to be held accountable in any way for his actions or lack thereof. Sade may not have even been the first woman that Maxwell targeted. Court documents would reveal that there was another young lady, a 24-year-old who had been on a bad date with Maxwell in February. She said that they had a few drinks, and almost immediately she began to feel sick, weak, and dizzy. This woman thought that she had probably been drugged. Perhaps Maxwell had plans to do more to this woman too, but changed his mind at the last minute. We'll never know. As of right now, Maxwell Anderson continues to maintain that he's innocent. He says that this informant is a liar. Since his bond was set at $5 million and he hasn't been able to pay it, he's been sitting behind bars since his arrest in April. His trial was supposed to begin on December 9th, but it's been delayed by several months. It's now set to move forward in May of 2025. According to his defense team, they want more time so that they can work with a computer forensics expert who says that they may have an alibi for Maxwell's whereabouts on the night of the murder. According to his defense attorney, quote, Our expert believes that there's evidence on Mr. Anderson's phone that suggests he was using the internet presumably at his home during the time frame that another person would have been driving Mrs. Robinson's car around. They're certainly going to have an uphill battle with all of the surveillance footage and the GPS trackers in his phone and Sade's. Until then, this monster is off the streets while waiting for his trial. Sade may not have been his first target, and if he wasn't caught, she may not have been his last. Now, as I wrap up tonight's episode, the heartbreaking truth remains. Maxwell continues to re-traumatize Sade's family by withholding crucial details that could bring them some peace and maybe even a sense of closure. By refusing to come forward with the truth of what happened to Sade, he's forcing her loved ones to relive the nightmare again and again, making this journey to justice even more painful. Sade doesn't deserve to be lost, not in life and certainly not in death, because of Maxwell's malicious actions. Now, all eyes are on him. Will he finally choose to do the right thing, perhaps for the first time in his life? Or will he continue to let his evil agenda dictate the course of events? Only time will tell. Until then, we'll keep pushing for the truth. That's it for me tonight. If you want to reach out, you can find me on Facebook at Serial Napper. You can find my audio on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I post all of my episodes in video format over on YouTube, so go check it out. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would love if you can give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm also on Patreon. If you'd like to get your Serial Napper episodes early and ad-free, make sure you hop on over and check it out. The details are at patreon.com/serialnapper. And I do want to address one little thing because I had a comment from someone who thought that now all of my episodes are Patreon only and that they would have to pay. And that's simply not true. All of my episodes are still free. My Patreon is just for people who want ad-free feeds and a little bit of bonus content. But all of my episodes are still free for you to listen to. Until next time, sweet dreams, stay kind, especially in the comments. Bye.